Hello and welcome back to the Cake and Batter podcast. This is Cole and I'm here with Jake as always.
What's up, everybody?
And we didn't give a rating for Hateful Eight, so before we move on to our movie that we're going to talk about today, I think we should at least give a rating for The Hateful Eight. So, Jake, what would you rate The Hateful Eight as?
A solid 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I could agree with that. It's a solid 9 out of 10. Would you recommend the movie?
I highly recommend the movie to not only to film buffs, but to anyone who likes a good whodunit movie.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. So, there is our rating for The Hateful Eight.
And we're sorry that we're so late on that. We realized that we were a bunch of dunces and we didn't give the rating like we said we would. So we're sorry about that.
But to make up for it, we're going to be talking about another Tarantino movie.
Yes, we are.
Today we are going to be talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which actually came out, as of recording right now, it came out last Friday.
And I hope everyone saw it, and I hope you contributed to the $40+ million that it made in its first weekend, a career best for Tarantino, which I am very happy about.
So, for people who haven't seen The Hateful Eight, and for some reason, or not Hateful Eight, sorry, my bad. For people who haven't seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and are somehow still watching this podcast, despite the fact that we are going to be going into spoilers throughout the entire thing, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood follows Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt. Leonardo DiCaprio plays an actor by the name of Rick Dalton, who shoots westerns in the early 70s during Hollywood's big TV boom era.
1969. I'm going to 1969, yeah.
Oh, see, I didn't read up apparently. Anyways, Leonardo DiCaprio plays an actor by the name of Rick Dalton, who does Western TV show type stuff, and he's nearing the end of his career. Brad Pitt plays his stunt double, who's been with him throughout the entire time, and they both kind of struggle with what they want, what they're trying to do, as, you know, Westerns are kind of fading out of existence.
And also coinciding with that plotline, you also follow Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate, basically just going throughout her day. She doesn't have too much of a plot. You're just following her as a character. That is more of a characterization type thread than an actual plot line for her.
And this does kind of play into what happened to Sharon Tate in our reality, as Sharon Tate was murdered by Charles Manson's cult.
Yeah.
But the way that it plays out in the movie is different because Tarantino likes doing alternate history things.
Yes, which we will get to that later because that will actually be, I think, a big thing for us to talk about because of it being different than real life. But we'll save that until later because it's the end.
So, Jake, what are your just general thoughts about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
My general thoughts are mixed in a good way. So when I talk to people and they say they usually keep saying that they have mixed feelings about it, and I do as well, but when they say it, they have mixed feelings, like they say some good, some bad. I thought the film was brilliant. So my mixed feelings are all good. I just saw it in a different way than most people because I liked the fact that it was for 2 hours kind of about nothing, really. I liked that, but I also would have liked to see more. But I think it's a good thing that I wanted more out of it, you know? That's always the sentiment, right? Leave them wanting more, right?
Yeah.
So I have mixed feelings, but I still think it's a brilliant film. I know you think a little bit differently than I do, don't you?
Yeah, I kind of have mixed feelings about the movie. I liked the movie. Don't get me wrong. I thought the movie was fantastic. But for some reason, I just felt like the movie was missing something. Like, there was a specific, thing in the movie. I can't really put my finger on it, but I felt like the movie didn't have... it didn't have enough. Because you spend the movie, like you said, following Rick Dalton and Brad Pitt's character,
Cliff Booth.
Cliff Booth. And like that was all good. I really like Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt really nailed their characters for this film.
I really agree with that. I think they had great chemistry too, as characters, you know.
Yeah, and I kind of see, like, you know, Margot Robbie's Sharon Tate throughout the movie, but it's like I feel like there wasn't, like, if since she was kind of almost in reality she's an integral part to this story. You don't really hear her talk all that much, and I guess that it makes sense in the context of the film because Sharon Tate's not the main character.
Yeah.
But they don't really interact at all. I mean, you hear her say a couple lines, and she's like, "Oh, hi, hey, how are you doing? You know, I'm in that movie." And I don't know, for some reason, when I was like, during the scene where she was trying to get into the movie theater for being Sharon Tate, for some reason, part of me, like, it almost felt like she was like an imposter of sorts.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, it's like it takes Margot Robbie like a bit of convincing with the people who are at the theater to get her in to see the movie in the first place.
Yeah.
And the picture on the poster, I'm assuming that's the actual movie poster.
Yeah, it was. So they actually used the real Sharon Tate poster, which was interesting.
Yeah, so it's like, and then and there, you know, I realized that was actually Sharon Tate, and then I saw Margot Robbie. And it didn't, you know, it kind of resembles Sharon Tate. But for some reason, I just felt like it was, like, almost like she wasn't Sharon Tate. But, I mean, I guess that's, like, a little bit of a nitpicky kind of thing.
I think it was kind of a little bit of a meta nod, you know, using the actual posters, but it's being played by Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate. I think it was kind of meta to do that. So I really didn't have a problem with it. Because I thought it was just kind of jabbing at the fact that this is a movie about movies.
Yeah. Speaking of a movie about movies, what I really did like about the film is that they didn't really fuck around with, like, when they showed actual film in the movie. Oh.
What do you mean?
Well, I guess, like, aspect ratio was key with this film.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're watching films that play on 4:3 screens, because that was the only screen that was there. There wasn't a lot of widescreen stuff except for in movie theaters.
Yeah.
So watching Rick Dalton's show, watching like, you know, the commercial at the end of the credits, watching any of the other stuff that was there, it was
like the stuff right at the beginning.
Yeah, it all felt real. It didn't feel like, you know, that was something that was just made for the movie. It felt like this was something that had actually aired, and, you know, like the Rick Dalton in there was like Leonardo DiCaprio's great grandpa or something like that, you know.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, because actually I think that you know, in ways it felt it felt real. But, you know, the second film stock that you see of Rick Dalton in his Western on I think it was a clip from Bounty Law, and he turns around and he shoots the guy on the roof, and the guy falls, and there's a Wilhelm scream.
Yeah, that got a chuckle out of me.
That got a belly laugh out of me.
I saw that with my friend. My friend and I went and saw the movie together, and once we heard that Wilhelm scream, we both just looked right at each other and just grinned, because it was like, yup, that's something that would have happened. And it's like, you know, in normal movies, when you hear the Wilhelm scream, you know that, like, that's just corny, cheesy, you know, garbage.
But, you know, that's what he was going for in this movie, though.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because the Wilhelm scream was, like, fairly kind of new. In Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, so it was so it wasn't just interesting. It was almost like, again, like you said with the Sharon Tate thing, it was almost like a meta nod to film as a medium.
The funny thing is,
we could totally be blowing this out of proportion off of some goofy Wilhelm scream, but, like, as filmmakers and film goers, you know, it's like that's something that made me smile.
It made me smile too, because, well, I think, like, 6 out of the now 9 films, there is a Wilhelm scream in 6 out of 9 of Tarantino's films. So I think he just loves that Wilhelm scream.
I just think it's just goofy as all get out, you know?
It is goofy, and we're probably spending way too much time on a Wilhelm scream.
But since we're talking about, like, you know, like one-off and almost sort of symbolism kind of stuff.
Yeah.
One thing that I was talking about with my friend throughout the movie that really kind of confused me a little bit until I put more thought into it and I can kind of justify it. There was a lot of bare naked feet shots in this film.
You haven't seen all of Tarantino's movies, so that is something new to you, but it shouldn't be. Wait till you see the rest of his movies.
So I guess either A, Tarantino really likes feet, which is kind of strange. But I get it. I kind of saw it as almost symbolic in this concept because bare feet in when I saw the movie, bare feet symbolizes freedom, almost. Because you only see 2 people with bare feet in this movie. You see, well, I guess as I remember so far, the only people I saw with bare feet right up in my face, which really kind of creeped me out a little bit, was the hippie girl. She had bare feet. And Sharon Tate also had bare feet. Which is like...
Yeah, she had dirty feet, too. She had dirty feet in the movie theater.
Anyhow, it's like... So those people, you know, the hippie girl, she symbolizes, like, you know... She's a hippie, right? We all know what hippies are about. Love, freedom, you know, all that sort of stuff. So her having bare feet sets that tone, or sets that symbol for, you know, not wearing shoes. Because you're not when you wear shoes, you're confined to, I don't know, covering up your freedom or something like that. I guess that's kind of how I try it. That's how I try to justify it. I really don't want to know whether or not Tarantino has, like, an affinity for feet.
I think you need to watch the rest of his films. That's what I think.
So I just tried to justify it in my mind because I was a little weirded out by that.
Yeah, there's a movie from Dusk Till Dawn that he didn't write, he did write, but he didn't direct it. That he acts in, and he sucks on Selma Hayek's feet. So I think
getting some real Dan Schneider vibes from this.
So I think you need to watch the rest of his films.
Oh boy!
But maybe he I can see that as symbolism, but I don't. But knowing him, seeing all of his films, I don't think that's the case.
He probably just did it for all the people who just really, really, really like feet.
Probably I mean, even because even with like feet with shoes on, he still follows them. He likes those low ground foot shots. You know.
Yeah.
But there was a really cool shot though when Sharon Tate's walking though, and you just like follow her boots for like 5 minutes straight as she's walking down the strip.
It took a while.
That's actually a pretty cool shot though. I liked that.
I saw that the narration came back for like a single section of the film, and it was when
a couple.
It was in a couple parts of the film, but the one that stood out to me the most, that made me really laugh out loud, was when DiCaprio or Rick Dalton lies about why he can't drive.
Yeah.
And then the voice comes on and he's like, "That's a massive lie."
And that I liked that, but I wish if he was gonna do that, there would have been more. And maybe there was more of that in his original 4.5 hour cut that I would love to see. But he only used it for that, and then later in the last like 40 minutes he used it.
Yeah.
But I wish he would have broke the fourth wall more, because it felt like it deserved it.
What else was?
I'll tell you what though, the 14 Fists of McCluskey. I want to watch that movie. I know it doesn't exist, but I want to watch that movie.
Yeah,
I want to watch Leo burn some sauerkraut. I want to watch that.
That was hilarious. Because it's like it cuts to him trying to use the flamethrower. He's like, "Is there any way to like turn this down?"
Yeah, he's like, "Is there any way to turn the heat down?" Rick, it's a flamethrower.
He's like, "Oh, yeah."
But
Yeah,
that,
right.
but then it comes back later when he burns the
Chicken
one of
pool.
he burns one of the killers in the pool with the
Yeah.
flamethrower. When he brought that flamethrower out, I lost it.
Oh yeah,
That
was just hilarious. Like
I just did not expect
the whole
it.
last second of the film, or like the last couple minutes of the film, are just like the best because and they kind of like allude to like that scene more in the beginning of the film because they're talking about Cliff Booth killing his wife. And then there's the 14 fists of whatever.
McCluskey.
Of McCluskey.
Yeah, I'm gonna remember that because that's a great title.
Yeah, so there's that, and that was crazy. And then was just,
and not only that, but the scene of Cliff feeding his dog kind of only exists as foreshadowing the final scene.
For the final scene.
Yeah, which normally I would say, okay, it's kind of out of place, but judging how the movie really is about nothing for 2 hours, it did kind of fit. So the way it was structured, it was fine.
And it's also interesting seeing like where Cliff lives versus where Rick lives
in his little
because
trailer.
You think that Cliff being a stuntman, doing all of these stunts for Rick Dalton in all of these movies, he would have a house, but he just ends up living in a trailer with his pit bull.
Well, that's because if you remember, he's too old to do the stunts now, and so no one will hire him. And Rick just pays him to do his handiwork and stuff.
Because Rick and Cliff are just like the best of friends, and that's Rick's trying to keep him working, I guess, because he cares about him.
And you kind of see that when Cliff asks him if he can do the stunts on what was it, on I think it was Lancer.
It was the show where he plays the bad guy.
But he can't because the stunt coordinator from the Green Hornet, which they tried to do together, is the stunt coordinator on Lancer, who hates Cliff, and then that goes into the flashback of
where you kind of wonder whether or not he killed his wife.
Yeah, it's funny because that whole scene has a flashback within a flashback, which is funny. But I like that scene. Before I say anything, what did you think of that scene with Bruce Lee?
I thought it was hilarious.
You did. You liked it.
I loved it. It was great. It was just a good scene.
I thought it was great too, but I felt a little disrespect towards Bruce.
Really? You think that Tarantino didn't like Bruce Lee?
No, I don't think that. I think Tarantino probably loves Bruce Lee, but I feel like the way he did his character was kind of dirty.
Oh, okay. I kind of get
because
what you're saying.
Because he felt like a big blowhard.
Yeah, but if Bruce Lee was a big blowhard, he wouldn't have stood up for Cliff after they were done fighting. That's the thing.
He didn't though. He was just he didn't stand up for him.
He vouched for him because he was like, because they were like, what was going on? They thought that Cliff just beat the shit out of Bruce Lee, but Bruce Lee's like, no, we were just having a friendly challenge.
Oh, but that was because Bruce didn't want anyone to know that he laid a hand on him.
I don't know.
It was a good scene though. I did like it. I don't know. It just felt a little weird to me.
I feel like they spoiled the best part of that scene in the trailer, and whoever made the trailer, I'm just kind of disappointed with. Because one of the best lines in that scene is like, "If I accidentally kill you, I'll go to jail." And then Cliff's like, "If you accidentally kill anybody, you go to jail. It's called manslaughter."
Yeah, unfortunately, I saw that line. I've heard that line so many times. There was no laugh in me in the theater because I heard it so many times and I had already laughed.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I feel like it kind of made up for it in the scene because like Bruce Lee gets thrown into a car.
Yeah.
And you don't expect that, so I feel like it kind of mellows itself out a little bit.
What was
Guaranteed,
really
I'm not happy that the trailer had that in there. But,
what was really entertaining was when he challenges Cliff and then he takes his coat off and gives it to one of his buddies, and he's like, Bruce, you think you can take that guy? He's kind of famous around here. And he's like, for what? And he's like, the dude killed his wife and got away with it. And Bruce is like, what? What? and then not 30 seconds later, he throws him into a car.
Yeah, it's like a foreshadowing within a foreshadowing or whatever.
I like the scene. I just had a few gripes with it. But,
that's understandable.
As a whole, what did you think of the first 3 quarters versus the last quarter of the film? Because it's tonally, it's a completely different film.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because like the way that Tarantino has, like from the other films that I've saw of Tarantino, they're very action packed. They're very like bloody and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're nonstop. They're always doing something with fast pace. Whereas this is just kind of laid back, and it's basically Seinfeld for 2 hours.
Yeah. And it's interesting to kind of think about that kind of stuff. Doesn't mean that I didn't like it. I actually really liked this movie. I just, for some reason, like I said, I had mixed feelings because I felt like the movie was missing something.
Yeah.
And I think and I have to look at it objectively because because not all of Tarantino's movies don't have to be the same.
Right.
So on its own, I really liked the movie, but compared to, Hateful Eight and Kill Bill and Pulp Fiction, it's kind of a little bit under that.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it's not like it's number 1 for me, but I want to see it again before I make a judgment call on where I put it for his filmography. But I do think it was a very impressive film. What I loved watching Rick act. I loved when he was in Lancer, and the best scene in the movie to me was him forgetting his lines.
Oh yeah,
and then he has his little freak out.
Hands down, that was like the best scene in the entire film.
Yeah, he's like, can't we just go back? Come on, let's go back. And
he wants to, he wants to nail it. And then you kind of see, after his pep talk, there's that scene where he's got the little girl. And he's holding her, and he throws her down, and then she whispers into his ear, that's the best acting I've ever seen. And then you realize that, Rick got his stuff back together.
Yeah, you see in his eyes, he's just so happy because he's like, finally some recognition again. He's got that high, that he used to have.
Exactly.
So I think that was the best part of the film.
And what do you think? All right, here's a question for you. Since we're still talking about characters, what did you think when Cliff went to the hippie camp?
So I saw that as kind of like the scene that turned the movie around. You mean
like set it up to be more
Tarantino? It finally got the story rolling into a Tarantino story. And because for that entire
wasn't this before the scene that we were just talking about where he does his lines?
I don't remember.
Yeah, because when Cliff was driving the girl to the hippie camp,
yeah,
he was also this is when Rick was doing his lines for Lancer.
I honestly can't remember, but if it was, then it was. But either way, that scene still got the ball rolling. It got it. It felt to me like this is where the plot is finally starting.
Yeah.
There was the little seed when you see Charles Manson walk up to the Tate residence, and Cliff sees him walk up there, and then Roman Polanski runs out there, and he's like, "What are you doing on my lawn? Who are you?" So you see Charles Manson for like a second, and that kind of plants the seed, and then later when he gets to the ranch, finally the ball starts rolling. That whole sequence, for me, was very tense. I thought Cliff wasn't going to make it out alive. I really didn't.
I thought that the old man was dead.
I had no idea. I honestly was expecting for him to just be missing. Not necessarily be dead, but he just wasn't there, Yeah. But I didn't think Cliff was going to make it out alive at all.
And then you kind of see Cliff like assert his dominance among the hippies by just beating the one dude senseless for slashing his tire.
Yeah, that's when I said, okay, here's my Tarantino. That's the Tarantino I know. That senseless violence. So when he beat him up, and then when he drove away, I was like, really? You're still alive? I really didn't think he was gonna be getting out of there alive. I thought the rest of the movie was just gonna be Rick and Sharon.
Yeah.
Rick and Sharon upon a time in Hollywood.
And I think that I don't know. What did you think? See, this is where one of my biggest gripes with the movie came in. Was the end. Now the end was phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. I loved every second of Cliff just destroying those kids.
Yeah.
And some of the special effects in that were just downright gnarly. When he threw that can at the girl and her nose went into her face, I was like, ugh. I was like, ugh, that's nasty.
He threw that can and she just fell to the floor like a fish.
Yeah. And just that whole scene was just, ooh, that was just peak Tarantino.
It really was. I was waiting for that.
On a form of violence, I think that scene alone was better than was probably better than some of the scenes in Hateful Eight for violence. Now, did it top the hanging scene from Hateful Eight? I don't know. It's up there though. They're pretty neck and neck for me, if I'll be entirely honest. Especially with DiCaprio just using the flamethrower at the end.
Yeah,
that was hilarious.
That flamethrower almost matches. I think I shot Marvin in the face. It almost matches that. It almost matches shooting Marvin in the face from Pulp Fiction, because I had no idea he was gonna just pull out a flamethrower. He just walks away, and then it cuts, and you see her screaming in the pool, and then he comes back and he's just got this big flamethrower, and he just torches her.
See, they let me keep the flamethrower from 14 fifths of
McCluskey.
And I was like, huh, that's awesome. And the thing, but the gripes I had with the movie were after that scene. The movie ended.
Did you think it was too abrupt?
Yes, I thought it was way too abrupt, because it's I want to know if Cliff gets better. I want to make sure that Cliff's okay. I've only known the Italian wife for who knows how long. I don't even remember her name. She's there for
Francesca,
2 minutes.
I think.
Francesca. She comes out there, she sees the people, she screams, Cliff saves her, she goes back in with the dog, and then what? What was the point of her in the story? Because it could have just been them coming back.
I guess.
And the scene would have changed a little bit, but it would have been relatively the same. I also thought that DiCaprio dropping the boombox into the water was going to electrocute the girl before he killed her.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. It's like dropping a toaster in a bathtub. You know.
I guess you're right.
It's like guaranteed death.
I guess you're right, but then that wouldn't let him flamethrow.
But that's perfectly fine because I'm entirely happy with that.
I liked at the end when he's talking to Jay Sebring and he just says it all nonchalantly. He's like, "Yeah, I had the flamethrower from a previous movie. I burnt it to a crisp." He just says it so nonchalantly.
And then JC's like, "Oh yeah, 14 fists of
McCluskey."
And McCluskey. I can't remember McCluskey for some reason. But he's like, yeah, 14 Fists of McCluskey. He's like, oh, you saw that movie? He's like, yeah, dude, I love that movie.
That's another thing I like. So when the four Manson cult members are in the car, after Rick yells at them to get off the street, and they kind of go down the street, they recognize Rick. And they're like, wasn't that Rick Dalton? And he's like, who? The guy who just yelled at us. That was Rick Dalton? Yeah, that was Rick Dalton. They kind of have like a little starstruck moment about Rick. And then the girl in the back, she's like, who's Rick Dalton? You don't know who Rick Dalton is? It was a great little moment.
I also want to know what happened to the girl that ran away.
Oh yeah, me too. I should have known that was gonna happen though. I don't know why I didn't know.
I kind of knew that was gonna happen, but I guess like she saved herself from being mauled to death by the dog.
True, Brandy saved the day, man. Brandy the dog saved the day.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know if that was like that. Even like when it showed the dog eating the people, was that even like an actor dog or was that like a puppet or something? Because that was.
I imagine it was probably a little bit of both.
Yeah,
because Tarantino likes his practical effects.
Them, that's probably a real dog. But the dog chomping on that dude's testicles, now that was probably.
Well, if you notice though, whenever or right after the dog latches onto the character, it cuts and it never sees. It lets you see above their waist. So yeah. I imagine it was probably a stunt guy with an actual dog with a bunch of padding on. So I think it probably was kind of real because Tarantino doesn't like doing doing that effect stuff, you know.
Yeah.
He likes all practical stuff and making it real, which is what helps.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that brings us full circle to like the I Am Mother episode where we were talking about practical effects as well. But I mean, it looked real enough. I mean, it was still really cool. Like that whole scene just had me like on the edge of my seat because I totally thought somebody was gonna die, and I thought it was gonna be the main cast and not any of like the cultists.
Yeah.
So, like watching them all die was just like it felt like a Tarantino movie.
So, is there a part of you that wanted to see them break into Sharon Tate's house and fight her?
Honestly, I wasn't even like when I was watching the movie, that didn't even cross my mind. Because like I knew Sharon Tate was the one that was supposed to die, and what I kind of thought happened was I kind of thought that they would go to Sharon Tate's house, but once they were like, wait, that's Rick Dalton. We should kill Rick Dalton. And then I was like, oh, this is what's happening in this reality.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of liked. I liked the story change to Rick and Cliff. I know a lot of people are having a problem with that, but I kind of liked it.
But I don't see the issue. It's a movie.
Right.
You know?
Right. And
you can do whatever you want in your movies. It's like it's not like he was making fun of Sharon Tate. He was like, "Oh, well, in my movie, Sharon Tate doesn't die."
Yeah, in fact, he was giving her kind of the ending she deserved, in a way.
Yeah,
but
yeah, and it's like, and then Rick Dalton just kind of went over and hung out because it's like he was talking to the guy, and then Sharon Tate comes out and she's like, "Hey, who's at the door?" And he's like, "Oh, it's Rick Dalton, your next door neighbor." She's like, "You want to get a beer?" And he's like,
"Yeah, you want to come up for a drink?"
Sure,
and he's like, "Yeah, why not?" And he just goes up there.
And then, and I think that's a fine way for it to end. I just think that with all the action that they had before, I feel like we should have at least gotten, like, some kind of follow-up. Like if Cliff, Cliff had, like, the knife stuck in his pelvis on his hip.
Yeah.
So it's like, I wanted to see what happened to Cliff. I wanted to see if Cliff and, Rick would be okay. I mean, what happened to Francesca and the dog,
I think the fact that the name is Once Upon a Time, I think that means that everyone gets a happy ending, because it gives it kind of a fairy tale like sound,
Yeah, it almost kind of, like, now that you think about it, it almost kind of feels like a fairy tale.
Yeah, I think
like,
he was
structured.
definitely going for that, he really wanted it to feel like a fairy tale, like not just alternate history, but what could have been and what should have been,
Yeah, no, I totally get that.
I just would love to see everything that was cut out, because it's funny if you paid attention to the credits at the end, there's a bunch of actors in there and then parentheses cut. And
yeah, and that's like what happened with, like, the 4-hour movie,
Yeah, because I remember right before it was supposed to premiere at Cannes, they said it was 4.5 hours, and that was the runtime.
Cut it.
Yeah, he cut it to just under 3 hours, and I feel like maybe in that extra hour and 40 minutes is where that missing chunk that you feel like you're feeling is missing. I feel like maybe it's in there.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks because I don't think we're really going to get, like, a director's cut version of the movie, because Tarantino doesn't do that.
Yeah, he really doesn't. I wish he would for this, though. I hope he considers doing it for this, because I would love to see... Because even in the trailers, there's a bunch of stuff in the trailers that isn't even in the movie.
Yeah, and I think that, like, for his penultimate movie, part of me thinks that it's okay that this movie is the penultimate movie. Like, not a lot of people really liked it, but the people that did like it enjoyed it for completely different reasons than what Tarantino normally does. So that means that if Tarantino is going to do something that he normally does for his last movie, then it's going to be objectively better than the last one for those kinds of people, therefore making his final movie maybe almost his best movie.
I feel like this was his most mature movie, because he restrained himself for 2 hours, for a little over 2 hours, from his violence that usually goes throughout his entire film. He just restrained himself, and he just explored his characters. And then he let loose on his Tarantino-isms for the last 30 minutes. But he really restrained himself, and it felt very different, and it felt like he looked at his entire career and said, I want to do something different this time.
Yeah, and I can respect him for that, It's like Tarantino's movies don't always have to be blood and guts and violence and
no,
the N-word. It proves that Tarantino can make a movie that is, mature and just all around just still a good film. And there's some, it may not be what people wanted from a Tarantino movie, but I feel like the movie on its own merits is still a really good movie, and it deserves that, all the praise that it should be getting.
I agree. The only gripe I have about this movie is there really isn't anything that memorable from it.
Oh yeah.
Aside from Sharon Tate not dying.
Well, yeah, that and the final scene, but that's just normal Tarantino, so I guess that technically doesn't even count, does it?
Yeah, so, like, when you think of his career, I know you haven't seen everything, but I'm sure when people name something off, you go, oh yeah, I've heard that. Like, the Stuck in the Middle with You scene, the torture scene from Reservoir Dogs. I know you've seen the scene. You haven't seen the movie, but you've seen that scene. You know, the Samuel Jackson's monologue from Pulp Fiction, the robbery in Jackie Brown, almost everything in Kill Bill, the stunt scene in Death Proof, the opening scene of Inglourious Bastards, the shootout in Django Unchained, and then the vomit scene in Hateful Eight and the hanging scene in Hateful Eight. But this movie didn't have anything memorable. You know, it didn't have anything iconic, which usually comes from his movies. Didn't have any memorable lines, really. It didn't have any...
I feel like it had some memorable bits, at least. Aside from the final scene, I feel like the thing that I remember the most is Rick Dalton yelling at himself in his trailer.
I mean, when I say memorable, I think I mean, like, stuff people will talk about 10 years from now. Like when someone says the torture scene from Reservoir Dogs, we all know what you're talking about. When someone recites the monologue from Pulp Fiction, we immediately know where it's coming from. So I feel like this movie was lacking in that department. It didn't have any memorable lines, you know? I can't say a line from that movie and someone will go, hey, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Right?
Yeah.
This movie, the most memorable thing was, oh, that's the movie where Sharon Tate lives, right?
Yeah.
But not to say that it's a bad film because of that, because it's not. It's a great film. But I just wish there was something more memorable. And clearly he just wasn't going for that. Maybe people will remember, oh, this is the one where Bruce Lee got his butt kicked, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe it'll change when I see it a second time, but I just wish there was more of that. I also wish there was more of that razor sharp dialogue, because there wasn't too much of that either.
Yeah, I mean, kind of thinking back on the movie, there really isn't, like, a lot to talk about except for a couple select scenes in the movie. Like you said earlier, the movie is kind of just about nothing.
Which is clearly what he wanted. You know, he clearly wanted it to be a reflection piece. You know,
yeah.
He wanted it to be a reflection piece about the film industry, which in turn almost makes it feel like it was a movie for people in the film industry.
And I mean, I kind of saw some of the beginning as a bit of, like, a reflection on Tarantino himself. You know, because it's almost like some of the movies that Rick Dalton starred in were almost like parodies of movies that Tarantino had made. Like, the 14 Fifths of, you know...
McCluskey, yeah, kind of like
McCluskey.
Kind of like a little parody of Inglourious Bastards, right?
And then Bounty Law is kind of like Django Unchained and Hateful Eight a little bit.
Well, Bounty Law is more kind of like Bonanza and Gunsmoke. It's more of a little ripoff of that. But
well, yeah, but I'm thinking about it as in like genre based kind of stuff.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I can see what you're saying.
I mean, I guess even that scene that Rick Dalton did with the little girl, like, that was kind of around the Hateful Eight kind of thing. You know, it's tense, it's dialogue heavy, and he's throwing a girl around, so...
Yeah, I guess I could see that.
I mean, I'm not saying that that's, like, what it is, but I guess that's the kind of thing that I pulled from that section of the film.
That's a fair assessment, I guess. I do think he kind of jabs at himself in this film a bit.
How so?
Well, kind of like what you said, like with the 14 Fifths of McCluskey, you know, he's kind of making like an over-the-top version of Inglourious Bastards with, you know, Leo running out and, did anyone order fried sauerkraut? And then torching everyone. And that's kind of like a little rip on Inglourious Bastards when in the end everyone dies from a fire. You know, and then the movie opens up basically with a Wilhelm scream, like we said earlier, which he likes to use a lot in his movies. So I feel like there are a lot of little moments that jabbed at his own career, and I mean that's, hey, a filmmaker that can look at himself and laugh is a good one, right?
Yeah. I agree with that.
So I think he looked at his career and said, okay, I did this. I want to do something different. And while I'm doing something different, why don't I jab at my own work? Because not only that, the fact that it isn't so bloody and so action-packed and so fast-paced for the first 2+ hours is a testament to the fact that he knows he's doing something different. Because even though, like, The Hateful Eight is 3 hours, it doesn't feel like it. Same with Django Unchained or any other movie he's made. And this doesn't necessarily feel like 3 hours, but it's certainly very, very slow.
Yeah.
So I liked the slowness of it, but it certainly seemed like he said to himself, I want something really slow this time. And I think he pulled it off with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he pulled it off. It's hard for me to be invested in movies that take forever to get started. So watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and seeing that and being interested in the movie and actually, being invested in the characters is, it takes a lot for a movie to keep me invested. And I think, even though Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was slow, the fact that I could still sit in my seat and I did not feel like I had to get up at any point during that movie, made me feel like I had, I don't know, that's just, like you said, that's a testament.
Yeah, I feel like I got my money's worth, which is more than I can say for most movies these days,
Yeah, there is something that I did want to mention that I didn't mention earlier. The thing that I liked about the characters for this movie is that it didn't feel like they were playing a role. When I watch a movie, for instance, that has Nick Cage in it, I don't see Nick Cage as the character. I just see it as, oh, that's just Nick Cage doing, movie stuff. When I watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, even with Brad Pitt and DiCaprio's track record...
You saw Rick and Cliff?
I saw Rick and Cliff. I didn't see DiCaprio and Brad Pitt playing roles. I saw them as their characters. And I think... And that's, like... It's hard for movies to do that with big names like that. And when I was talking to my friend, he said that's the fun part about watching indie movies. Is because you don't see these actors as just actors. You see them as characters because you haven't seen them anywhere else.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's part of the reason why I kind of have now prefer the indie scene for movies. But I saw an interview with Tarantino where he was talking about movies these days and what kind of prohibits them from being, classics now. And he said something interesting to me, and it ties into what you're saying. It's that the actors don't care about their performances too much anymore. They go in, they get their paycheck, they do their job, they go home. Like any other job. But he says when he's on set, he doesn't care about that. He wants to push and push and push and push his actors so they give that best performance, And that's also what, gave him the inspiration for Rick. Because he wrote the character of Rick Dalton with Leonardo DiCaprio in mind. And he said that he really wanted to make this movie different from everything else coming out right now because he wanted those performances, And And because of that, I agree with you. I saw Rick and Cliff. I didn't see Leo and Brad. I saw Rick and Cliff, and I loved every moment of it. I felt their character. Like, even when Rick had his little moments and he starts sobbing for like 2 seconds, but then clears it up all of a sudden. I felt for him, though I felt for him. Usually, it's hard to make me care for a character that's in the film industry as an actor and has earned so much money but blown it all away. It's hard to get you to empathize with a character like that. But yeah, he did it.
Yeah. What do you think it's fair to call Once Upon a Time in Hollywood almost like a meta movie?
Yes. I would say that's very fair to call it very meta. Because it's definitely so it's about this actor, right, who was on a show called Bounty Law, which is, let's face it, it's his version of Bonanza and Gunsmoke. And when you watch him act in it, it's that over the top acting, right?
Yeah.
It's Leo as Rick, as the character in the movie, which is meta in itself. And he does the oldie time acting where you're squinting, you're talking really loud, and you're overly dramatic. So I think it would be a fair assessment to call this movie meta, because it knows what it's poking at. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
It's meta until the point where it's not, right? That's how I see it.
Yeah. That's definitely how I could see it as well.
And that's what made me love the film, because it's meta until it's not, whereas usually it's one or the other.
Yeah.
That's what made me love the scene of him screwing up his lines so much, because you see Leo acting as Rick, acting as the guy on Lancer, until he has to stop acting like the guy on Lancer to act like Rick, to act as Leo. It's almost like Tarantino's building up 3 different people and then tearing down those 3 people in the same scene. You kind of get what I'm saying?
This is going to sound really corny. Yeah, this is going to sound really corny, but don't you think that it's like a form of like actor inception?
Yes. I don't think that's corny at all. I think that you're absolutely right.
Because it's like, I was going to say it's corny because Leonardo DiCaprio was also
he was in Inception. You're right.
He was the main character in Inception.
Yeah. You're right. I didn't even think that. I didn't put that together.
Isn't it crazy though that the phrase like that our common use of the word Inception stemmed from the movie by the same name?
It's because everything turns into a meme now.
Yeah, you're right.
So that was Rickception.
It was Rickception.
And it's what made the scene great.
Is there any other points that we want to hit with this movie? I don't really know what else I have to say about it right now.
I feel like there's something, but I can't. Oh, what did you think of the scene when Rick and Cliff are watching Rick on FBI? And basically, you're just watching them watch the show.
I thought that was a fun scene. I think it brings you into. It felt like the same experience of like when you and I would watch one of our stuff.
Yeah, it did. Except you're watching them do it though.
Yeah, but the acting in that scene is so it feels so genuine. It's almost like, and since you already got to know these characters, it feels like you're there with them watching FBI, even though FBI is a show that doesn't exist.
I think FBI did exist at one time, but it wasn't as long running as Once Upon a Time made it seem like it was. I think it was.
Yeah, but I mean, like Tarantino's version of FBI.
Yeah, yeah. That it almost felt like I was watching a reaction YouTube video.
Yeah, I totally could see that.
It felt like a jab at everyone who reacts to themselves, because you're watching these people and they're just talking randomly, and then Rick goes, "Oh look, here's my scene. I'm about to be up," and then they just talk through the whole thing, like they're barely even watching it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's also kind of interesting because you're at this point in Rick's career where Rick is not as prevalent as he used to be. So, you don't know how good of a job he's doing. But to him, he's like selling you his performance while you're watching the scene itself. Almost
Right.
like he's insecure about his performance.
Oh, I think he's very insecure about his performance. I think that's part of the big driving force of his character, because he, when he first meets, I forgot his name, but Al Pacino, when he first talks to Al Pacino in the beginning of the movie, Al Pacino tells him, you're a great actor, but they're not cherishing you. You're getting too old. This is what they do to older actors,
They have him play the villain.
Right, so that they can phase you out to introduce the new generation. And because of that, you can see Rick take that to heart to his performance, not to his age. And you can see him really try and get back to having such a good performance, rather than realizing it's his age. It's not necessarily the work he's putting out.
Speaking of performance scenes like that, what'd you think about the scene between Rick and the little girl?
Which one?
The first scene. When
where
they're just kind of sitting there talking.
And she's reading the book?
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of sweet. Because he walks up, and then here's this little girl taking her part very seriously. She wants to be called by her character's name only. She doesn't want to be called by her real name, to the point where she won't even tell him her real name. And Rick's just like, I'm Rick. And Rick is reading, his Western novel, and she's reading her book on movies, and she's kind of taking it more seriously than Rick. And so you kind of see this new generation.
I think it's like a reflection of what Rick used to be.
I think it could be a little bit of that, but more so, I think it's seeing this new generation that is taking their acting way more seriously than they used to. Because like when you watch old movies from like the 50s and 60s, which is when Rick Dalton was at his high, right? The 50s and early 60s, right?
Yeah.
There was this method to acting that's different than now, right? It was more theater-like, They would talk really loud. They would be over dramatic. They would do their best to have their good side on the camera. So when you see this new young girl actress, she's part of the new generation, trying to take her acting seriously. Like, she's like, I don't even eat an hour before my scene so that I can have my best performance. Whereas before, they just got up there and they just acted. He's not used to that, and so he's trying to see what is different between him and the new generation. That's what I see it as.
Yeah.
It could be a reflection, like you said, but I see it as kind of like a divide between the two generations of actors.
Yeah, that makes more sense than what I was thinking about it. I think it's a little bit of both, though, don't you think?
Yeah, it probably is a little bit of both. I would say it just speaks to me more the other way about the divide between the actors' generation, though.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion.
Yeah. So, what do you think? What's your final thoughts for this movie?
Final thoughts is that it is not my favorite Tarantino film, but it is probably in my top 5 of his. I think it was one of the best movies of this year, and probably will stay like that. And I could see it staying my top film of the year. I think Leo, Brad, and Margot Robbie were perfection. And I think as a story, seeing this kind of story from Tarantino gave me a smile for the whole 3 hours. So I really enjoyed it, and I'd give it a solid 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I can kind of agree with you on some points. Was it my favorite film of the year? Yeah, probably. I don't think that there's a movie that I've seen this year that's better than Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I do agree that it's not my favorite Tarantino film. I've only really seen a couple, so it still fits into the top 5 spot because I haven't seen any more than just Pulp Fiction, both the Kill Bill movie and Hateful Eight. So I've only seen like 4 movies, including this. I do think that I agree with you. Leonardo DiCaprio is Rick Dalton, Brad Pitt is Cliff Booth, and Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate were all perfection. I don't think I'd give it a 9, though. I think I would probably give it like an 8.5. Like high 8s.
It's close enough. I enjoyed the nostalgia too. That's what keeps it at a 9 for me. And might I add, I forgot to mention, Leonardo DiCaprio gives the best performance of his career. I will not change my opinion.
I think it would have been really funny if he didn't get an Oscar for The Revenant, and he ended up getting an Oscar for this movie.
He got an Oscar for The Revenant.
I said I think it would have been funny if he didn't.
Oh, if he didn't, okay.
Because you know how it was kind of a joke that Leonardo DiCaprio, despite being a very good actor, has never won an Oscar?
Yeah.
And now you can't make that joke anymore because it's The Revenant.
Oh, yeah. And they, not only that, they gave it to him for the wrong movie. They didn't, The Revenant was not that good. Anyway, that's for another show, though.
Yep. So what are we gonna watch next, Jake? Do you have any ideas? Because I'm feeling like, and watching all these good movies, we're sitting here, we're yanking our chains and all that, but I think it's high time that we.
I think maybe we
really
need to
bad movie.
Yeah, we need to destroy ourselves. We need to break ourselves down. I think that's what we need to do. We need to load a gun with bad movie bullets, and we need to shoot our brains out.
And I think that I have the perfect movie for you, Jake.
Oh, do you?
Yes. Although you already know what the movie is and we're all just playing a part.
Yeah, we're just doing a little skit.
Anyways, there's a movie that I found on Netflix. It's called Swiped. And it looks really, really, really bad.
I don't to die.
I don't know anybody in it. Except for, I think one of the characters is a mom. And they're from like a Disney Channel sitcom, so I know you don't like Disney, so this will be a treat for you.
Oh my god. I think there's a kid on there that was on it that was a YouTuber at one time too. I think he's a minor character, if I'm correct. I looked up a little bit about the movie, and I saw it's got like a horrible reviews, and I can't wait to rip it to shreds. Or who knows, maybe I'll enjoy it. If I enjoy it, maybe I should just get out of the film industry.
Well, I'm assuming that if you would enjoy this movie, you would enjoy Disney movies, but we know you don't like those.
Hey, I enjoyed Not Another Teen Movie, so I don't know what to think about myself anymore.
All right, well, I guess with that, go on to Netflix and watch Swiped. It's about some kid that makes a dating app.
Yeah, it's about everything that's wrong with our culture today. That's what it's about.
So give that a watch, and then next week we will talk about that movie.
That pile of trash. So
we don't know if it's a pile of trash. All I know is that it looks really, really, really bad.
Can you feel the pain in my voice? How about can our viewers hear the pain in my voice right now? I think they can.
All right, well, this has been the Cake and Batter podcast. I've been Cole.
And I'm always Jake.
And we will catch you in the next episode.
See ya.